Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by State Farm.
Good morning. It is week 14 in the NFL, and this is Fantasy Football Live here on Yahoo Sports. I'm Liz Loza, and I'm joined, as always, by my favorite Sunday morning crew. It's Andy Behrens from Michigan, Tank Williams up in the Bay Area, Matt Harmon in Los Angeles, and Minty Betts in Las Vegas. Last chance for the fantasy postseason, and we're here to help you get that much-needed victory to clinch a spot or move up in the standings. Let's check in with our illustrious analysts and get some things to watch in Week 14. Andy, as is the tradition, why don't you start us off?
This is kind of an ugly answer as to what I'm actually watching this week, but I've got a lot of shares in that Titans backfield, and they get Jeremy McNichols back this week, and it can't be a three-headed committee, right? Like, we can survive if it's just two guys running the football, but if it's McNichols, Hilliard, Foreman, that's going to get real messy real quick.
I have a feeling you're not the only one pondering that situation. We're probably going to get a lot of Foreman, Hilliard, McNichols questions coming up, so prepare your answers, Andy. Matt, what about you? What are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah, my eyes will be on this Dallas-Washington game. I know that everybody that's playing daily fantasy is excited about stacking up Buffalo and Tampa Bay, but I think this Washington and Cowboys game could be really interesting from a fantasy perspective. I mean, you got Mike McCarthy out there guaranteeing a victory, Ron Rivera, giving psychological speeches to his own team or whatever. And meanwhile, we've got two teams that give up explosive plays through the air, two really interesting passing games. Taylor Heineke is white hot of late, and obviously we know the Cowboys are very talented and healthy too. I can't wait to watch that game.
Absolutely. Definitely dig into the head coach whose hottest take is a quote from an Austin Powers movie. Tank, how about you?
Yeah, I'm focused on the NFC West. I want to see what's up with that Cardinals versus Rams, that rematch. I mean, it seems like the Rams got that get back against the Jags, and then the Cardinals just have come back stronger than ever now that Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins are back in the mix. And so I feel like that Monday Night Football game is going to be pretty interesting. And since I'm talking about the NFC West, who's that receiver that plays for the 49ers that didn't really do anything when my man Deebo Samuels was out last week? I'll wait.
Oh, it was nice that Tank finally got a first place in our daily fantasy contest. That was so good to see. What a nice little surprise there.
Okay, gentlemen,
hey,
settle down.
Hey,
Tank,
have you won a ring yet? Hey, until you win a ring, then you can holler at me, Harmon. You ain't got that yet, baby.
We will speak about the player who has no name in Tank when you and I do make your pick. Just wait. You'll be able to get your revenge here. Minty, please stop the foolishness and tell us what's going on at the sports book.
All right, we're seeing a lot of action on that San Francisco-Cincinnati game. Lots of bets and a lot of sharp money on San Francisco, but also a ton of public money on Cincy. So that'll be interesting to watch. And surprisingly enough, the most bet matchup over at BetMGM is the Lions-Broncos game, with a lot of people riding on the Broncos. So that should be interesting to watch. And what Tank said, the NFC West, very interesting to watch and see what happens in that Cardinals-Rams game.
I'm going to put the focus back on the AFC because for me, the Ravens at Browns game is really intriguing. That matchup is full of could-be sleepers, one of which I'll talk about a little bit later in the show. I'm also interested to see how Lamar responds after being sacked a career-high 7 times last week at Pittsburgh. I mean, we, as a group, as a collective, didn't have it nearly as bad as Lamar last week, but we're still eager to respond to you because this show is all about you. So send your questions, your roster questions, to us on Twitter using the AskFFL hashtag, or drop one in the chat and we'll try to get to as many as we can on the show. Plus, Scott Pianowski is answering questions all morning long right there at the Yahoo Fantasy handle. All right, let's turn our attention to the injury report for Week 14 now. Some widely rostered players who are out this week include Eli Mitchell, Darren Waller, Keenan Allen, and Darrell Henderson. The actives and inactives we've been monitoring. Here's an update. Dallas running back Tony Pollard is inactive today against the football team. He was a game-time decision with a foot injury. On the other side of that matchup, J.D. McKissic, who's been dealing with a concussion, will not be able to go today. The 49ers are on the road at Cincinnati. Good news, as both Deebo Samuel and Joe Mixon are expected to play this afternoon. That is the latest. Now it's time to get into our first over-under. Andy?
Yeah, first over-under it's just an absolute party of a player in Taysom Hill against the Jets, and we have set the number here at 2.5 combined touchdowns. Fantasy's supposed to be fun, right? And what could be more fun than starting an injured Taysom Hill in a must-win week? That's where we're at. He's coming off a game in which he threw a couple of touchdown passes, rushed for over 100 yards, was objectively bad also, throwing 4 interceptions. But listen, fantasy scoring at the quarterback position is weird, so he still had a good week for you. He's now facing a Jets defense that's allowed 21 combined touchdowns to quarterbacks, that's allowed 22 combined touchdowns to running backs. He's a little bit of both. I think he goes over this number. I think he finishes with 3. Matt, do you agree?
I think he could have 3 touchdowns. I think he could have 3 turnovers. Taysom Hill's like the only quarterback in the NFL where it's actually advisable. Like, you can start him and the defense going against him too, all in the same lineup. Yeah, give me the over on this one. Weird player, weird situation. He's going to have to do this. There's not even if Alvin Kamara's back, there's not a lot of help around him. He's going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting on his own.
Liz, can we make it a sweep?
Yeah, we should definitely bring out the broom here. I mean, you both mentioned all of the same points I was going to bring up. It is worth also saying, though, that Hill managed 2 scores in each of the games he started between weeks 11 and 14 of last year. So the question is, and he's coming off a 2-score game against Dallas last week, right? So the question is, can he manage one more? Well, at the Jets, he certainly can. Andy provided all of you with the defensive stats from the Jets. I mean, they are leading the league in rushing scores, and without anyone behind Alvin Kamara, then you have to imagine Taysom will use his legs to make up some of the difference against a very beatable run defense. So I'll take the over as well.
There it is. We're all in on Hill. What could possibly go wrong? We're going to have more over-unders later in the show. Right now, let's send it to Tank for a little DFS talk.
Holla! Once again, it's time for our surprisingly great rates presented by State Farm. Now, my DFS value plays can fit in any budget, just like State Farm offers surprisingly great rates with coverage that meets your needs. Now, let's dig into the Sunday night matchup where Justin Fields makes his return to the lineup as the Bears travel to Lambeau to take on the Pack. Now, my first guy that I'm going with is Davante Adams. I mean, he had 5 targets, 4 receptions, 89 yards in the first matchup against the Bears, but I feel like A-Rod and Adams are going to come out with something to prove playing at Lambeau Field. There's been a lot of chatter between both of these teams, and I feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to try to take out all his frustrations of the pinky toe and everything else on the Bears this week. So I really like Davante Adams being the target of all those frustrations at $35. On the flip side, I'm going with my man David Montgomery, $21. Now, in the first game, Khalil Herbert was actually the starting running back. He still had 19 carries, 97 yards in the tub when Monty was out. We've seen that the Bears are willing to lean heavily on Monty regardless of the game script. He had a decent game against Arizona last week. I feel like he's going to be heavily involved this week, even with Justin Fields back in the fold. But the superstar who I'm going with is my man Aaron Rodgers, $31. Like, the dude already said he owns the Chicago Bears, and every time I hear that and see Rodgers, I just see that meme of Leonardo DiCaprio and Django just with the... And that's how I picture Aaron Rodgers every time he thinks about the Chicago Bears. He's going into this one. I feel like he's going to sling it all around Lambeau on Sunday Night Football, and I feel like he's going to more than pay up for that value at $31. So that's why he's my superstar in Sunday Night Football. Now, going to the Monday Night Football game, I feel like it's tough to really beat a team twice, especially if it's a team in your division, but at the same time, I feel like the Arizona Cardinals are the better team, and so that's why my picks are trending this way. Starting off with Zach Ertz. I don't know if you remember from my segment earlier this year, but I feel like Cliff Kingsbury found like a little glitch in the matrix. Like, whenever they play the Rams, he likes to target that defense with his tight ends, whether it's with Max Williams or other tight ends that he's had in the past. He's found that spot open in the middle, always open, because I feel like they try to take away those receivers on the outside. And at the same time, they're going to have to try to stop that run game that ravaged them in the first game as well. So I look for Zach Ertz, who wasn't there. Max Williams was there this first game, so I feel Zach Ertz has a big game this week. On the flip side, Sony Michel. We already understand that Darrell Henderson isn't going to play. Sony Michel is priced like Darrell Henderson is starting at $17. He already had a lot of toast against the Jaguars. I feel like Sean McVay trying to establish the physicality of this team, especially against a team that beat up on them the last time they played. I feel like Michel's going to be heavily involved at $17. That's a lot of volume for such a small price tag. And that's my superstar for the Monday Night Football game. I'm going with my guy, Kyler Murray. He stayed in the pocket against the Rams in that first matchup, lit him up on the outside. A.J. Green had a big game Edmonds and my man Connor were running all over him, but I feel like Kyler uses his legs in this one and takes advantage of that Rams defense as they're trying to focus on taking away the run game and focusing on those wide receivers outside. So regardless of how things go, Kyler Murray is always going to be that guy in the middle of everything, keeping things going. I feel like he's going to be Speedy Gonzalez today, running all over the Rams defense on Monday Night Football. So remember, whether you lace them up on Sundays or you're locking in your lineup at the last minute with us, State Farm offers surprisingly great rates on car insurance. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Get a quote today.
Welcome to the sports book, everyone. No specific trends regarding any specific teams today, because as we know, the Packers are the best team against the spread, and the Jets are the worst team against the spread. But here's some general NFL betting trends for this season. Now, underdogs are 107, 85, and 1 against the spread, which means they've covered in 55% of those games. Unders are 111, 82, and 1 against the spread, covering the under 58% of the time, and road dogs are 67, 43, and 1 against the spread, which means road underdogs have covered in 61% of games. Surprising. I will be back in a bit with my best bets for week 14.
Let's get our first check-in on social media this morning and answer some of your roster questions. Don't forget to keep sending those questions to the hashtag AskFFL. Our first tweet comes from Michael Stein. And this attorney named Michael Stein has a question about his flex position, Javonte Williams versus Detroit, coming off of a very big game, or DJ Moore versus Atlanta. Tank, why don't you start us off?
Well, we know that Uncle Melvin is coming back for the Broncos, but I'm still rolling with Javonte because if you haven't read the news clippings, it seems like everybody in Detroit either has some version of COVID, the flu, or probably some kind of stomach flu where almost everybody's been either missing practice or missing time. So I look for them coming off unexpected win against the Vikings to roll into Denver and get that beat down by the Broncos, and most of that's going to be on part of Javonte Williams with his legs. Go do it, cuzzo.
All right, this next question is addition by subtraction from add your name. Who do I bench? Saquon Barkley, Antonio Gibson, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or Jeff Wilson? Matt, you and I talked about Saquon Barkley on last week's wrap-up pod. So are you willing to bench him here, or are you thinking there's a 49er you might prefer?
No, I think you play Jeff Wilson. You know, it sounds like he's going to lead this backfield in touches. Obviously, Debo playing, he'll mix into the rushing game as well. But it's between Saquon Barkley and Clyde Edwards-Helaire for me. I mean, even in like a pretty perfect game script last week, the Chiefs still didn't really even get him to 15 carries was Clyde Edwards-Helaire as they were leading against the Broncos basically all night. And like that's a defense you want to run on. The Raiders you can run on as well. So I think it's between those two guys, and I'm probably going to edge to Barkley just because the share of team touches, even though Booker got some work last week, strangely enough, I'll probably keep Barkley in the lineup and send CEH to the bench as a floor play only.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Next question is from Colton Simpson. Colton asks whether he should start T. Higgins versus the Chargers, Terry McLaurin versus Dallas, or Ezekiel Elliott, who's at Washington, at flex this week. Andy, who are you flexing of this trio?
Wow, we can only play one from this group. That is really impressive. Well, it's down to McLaurin and Zeke for me, which is not like, listen, no disrespect to T. Higgins, he's played great. Zeke gets the benefit of the fact that Tony Pollard's not going to play, right? And that, I think, for me, tips it in. It's not like Washington has been the friendliest possible matchup to opposing rushers, and Zeke himself hasn't been particularly efficient lately, but he's going to get goal line work. He's probably going to see 20-plus touches in this one. Really good chance that Zeke, even if he's not efficient here, still finds the end zone once or twice, so it's got to be Elliott for me.
Last question is from the Real Dro. Actually, no, it's from somebody else. It's from my MY. Cordarrelle Patterson or Sony Michel. Obviously, I already mentioned that Darrell Henderson is inactive on Monday night. Matt, are you preferring Patterson and his versatility, or Sony, who we also talked about on last Sunday's pod?
Oh, man, this is really tough. I would love to have either one of these guys make this lineup decision myself. I think I'm probably going to edge just slightly to Sony Michel if Darrell Henderson indeed misses this game. Sounds like he will. You know, Arizona, 32nd in explosive run rate allowed. I think Sony Michel gave them that, like, punching rhythm as a runner that the Rams offense really has basically needed all season. I mean, Henderson's a good big play threat. He's got a lot of juice as a rusher, but I think Michel gives him another dimension. I think they continue to lean on that. And look, if there's no Henderson, you can basically lock in Sony Michel for 18 plus touches in a potentially high scoring game. And again, in a good matchup against that Arizona run defense. I think that's the direction you're going, as great as Patterson's been all year.
Makes a lot of sense as well. All right, it's time for our first break here on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, we'll make our picks for who will be off their game in Week 14.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed. Aliens fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
Yeah, it's time for a little off their game. You guys know the rules around here. We're talking about players who are started in over 50% of Yahoo leagues who we think might disappoint in this one. Matt, why don't you get us started? Who's going to be off their game this week?
Yeah, I'm not that excited. Well, I'm excited that Chuba Hubbard barely qualified for this segment. I think he's 55% started in Yahoo leagues. It's sweet. All right, let me talk down a Panther. I absolutely love to do that. I'm not that excited about him this week. I know that it's a pretty friendly matchup. Honestly, if you have Chuba Hubbard, this is probably the one time the rest of the year you're going to feel pretty good about starting him. He's going against the Falcons. They've got the Bills, the Bucks a couple times, the Saints to end the year. So this is probably the spot where you're feeling the best about him. But even still, this is a guy who is going to get siphoned at the goal line by Cam Newton. I know that Matt Rule wants to run the ball 30 to 33 times a game, apparently. That's why Joe Brady got sent out the door. Good luck with that, my guy, behind this offensive line with this overall team structure right now. Again, maybe they pull it off against the Falcons, but not that confident in the overall workload, not confident in the goal line work, and definitely not confident in the passing game work because Amir Abdullah was already starting to take that away even before Christian McCaffrey went down. So not that much juice here. I think he is basically just in the low-end RB2 discussion, which you might have to play, but I'm not that excited about it.
Tank, who are you talking down this week?
Y'all remember when I told y'all Brandon Cooks was QB-proof earlier this season? Maury Povich found that to be a lie. My man Brandon Cooks has just gone down the drain over the past month. He's only had one double-digit outing over the past 4 games. Now my man Davis Mills, shout out to Stanford, but now he's going to be the starting quarterback. It seems like Houston is in that it seems like they're in the tanking mode while making it seem like they're just evaluating players. Seattle's defense gives up the 4th fewest wide receiver points to fantasy Wide receivers, I mean, everything looking at this game is just atrocious, just similar to how Cooks' fantasy production has been over this past month, with the exception of the garbage touchdown that he got against the Jets a couple weeks ago. So it's a damn shame Cooks is no longer cooking with the Texans because the food in H-Town is bomb, but his point production is going to be, especially this week against the Seattle Seahawks.
For me, listen, I don't want to say that you can't possibly start Matthew Stafford this week. Of course you can. He's been really good. I just want you to feel bad about it. I just want you to feel a little bit worse than you normally would. He's been really good lately, right? Like, he's got 3 touchdown passes or more in 5 of his last 7. He's averaging about 300 passing yards per game on the year. Like, that is perfectly fine for fantasy purposes. The matchup this week, not particularly friendly. It's the Arizona Cardinals, and you run against the Arizona Cardinals if you want to do a little bit of damage. You don't pass against them. They're only allowing 6.4 yards per attempt on the season. They got a dozen interceptions already. I think we can count on Stafford for 1 or 2 picks in this thing. You're just hoping that he manages to throw a couple of touchdown passes. I think, as Matt was explaining earlier, I think this is a Sony Michel game. That is what the matchup says, right? The Cardinals give up like 4.7 yards per carry. Should be a good day on the ground for Michel. I don't think you're going to get the usual week out of Matthew Stafford. Now, I want to send it to 2 people who have literally never, ever been off their game. It's Liz, it's Austin. Let's see what they're talking about in Eckler's Edge.
Let's begin with your favorite fantasy receiver, Ja'Marr Chase. As you know, the rookie started the season hot, but has cooled considerably since Cincy's bye. You saw him flip the script on that touchdown turned interception last Sunday. Do you think he can rebound, or will he have a repeat in week 14 versus the Niners?
But there's this thing called the rookie wall, and I'm like, is he hitting the rookie wall? Where it's like your rookie year, you go through your college career, you immediately start training for pro day, then you immediately start training for combine, stuff like that. And it's just such a long year. By the time you're like week 8, 9, I remember it hit me in week 12 my rookie year. You're just worn out and you don't feel like yourself. You just feel tired. I'm going to say he's going to rebound coming into this next game.
I hadn't considered the rookie wall. That's some really interesting insight. I think, though, I'm probably going to say rebound as well, because when we look at the 49ers secondary, like, Josh Norman has not been the same since Derrick Henry stiff-armed his soul. And Emmanuel Mosley, the other lead cornerback, is out with an ankle injury, which should ease things up for Ja'Marr Chase. So I have him projected for a little bit over 70 yards and a touchdown. I think he rebounds. Next, let's focus on the running back position. Ezekiel Elliott has been playing through a knee injury since week 4. That's resulted in 4 straight games under 50 rushing yards. In week 14, the Cowboys traveled to DC for a very important division contest against the football team. Do you think Zeke can rebound, or will he repeat?
Zeke, man, injuries. I can speak firsthand. When you're coming through an injury, you're trying to like really play through it, and you might be 100% now, but your 100% is knocked back so far because of that injury, or might still be there and still be limiting your body because you're trying to protect it. When he's also got, Pollard right behind him who's playing lights out, I can see the Cowboys continuing to limit him. In my opinion, like, what's the point? Why are we pushing him? Like, let's let him chill. Like, if he can take some, let's do that so he can start to get a rhythm. His body can start to get back into it. But if he's not 100%, let's lean on Pollard a little bit more. So I'm going to say repeat just because I think they're going to lean on Pollard.
I am going to say repeat because I think the plan for Zeke is that they're going to want to limit his touches, but also his goal line equity is so incredible. He has at least 11 goal line carries on the season. And even though he managed under 50 rushing yards over that span of time I mentioned, he also managed 3 scores over that time. So I think you have to make him an RB15 regardless, because he'll probably get a touchdown even if the rushing yards aren't there. Finally, let's chat about Lamar Jackson. Last Sunday at Pittsburgh, he was sacked a career high 7 times. He's also thrown 13 picks through 11 games. This Sunday, he'll travel to Cleveland to face a Browns team that held him to under 20 fantasy points just 2 weeks ago. So can he rebound, or will this be a repeat of week 12?
Yeah. Last week, the man was running for his life, but I think that just comes, with playing Pittsburgh. They want to rush the passer. Last time they played the Browns, threw 4 picks and still won the game somehow. The Baltimore Ravens, they're always in it. I just don't see how you can hold this man down forever if he's still healthy. I see a rebound because he's just too big of a part of this offense for really, I think, any team to really hold him down. It's almost you have to match his tempo. Like, hey, we're going to have to go score points if we're an offense going to play Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson is special. He's salty. He's going to take 2 to 3 sacks in this game, right? But if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a top 5 option because of that invisible juice that my colleague Tank Williams says is in his leg. So I'm with you. Let's rebound here. You like that shout out, Tank? All right, it's time to get into some flex questions from, the hashtag Make Your Pick at Yahoo Fantasy. Our first one comes from Hot Stove Steve, AJ Dillon, Hollywood Brown, Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin for 2 spots. Tank, my colleague and friend, I'm feeling AJ Dillon in this one because of because of game flow, frankly, and how much you and I are both expecting the Packers to own the Bears. But are you preferring one of these wide receivers instead?
I definitely feel the AJ Dillon. I just always worry about how that split's gonna go with my man. Dang, Aaron Jones. But you know what? Like, I gotta admit, like, my first inclination was to be like, yo, like, Amari Cooper and Terry McLaurin both have really good matchups. It seems like Amari Cooper's not gonna be limited. I already expect my man Scary Terry to ball out against the Cowboys today. So having both of those wide receivers go against each other and hopefully like a shootout in DC, like, that could be fire. But I definitely understand where you're coming from with the AJ Dillon take, though.
So you're gonna take both of the receivers?
I mean, your safest play to me is to pick AJ Dillon because you feel like they're going to use him in the run game. They're going to be playing from a positive game script from Green Bay's standpoint where they're going to probably try to run out the clock at the end. But I feel like those 2 wide receivers definitely have a lot of upside, especially if you get a shootout. So that's how I would look at it. You just have to do it based upon who you're going against and what you need this week.
All right, let's go to the next one. It is from Fantasy Jakester. Playoff start this week, playing against Dak. Do I play Amari and Gallup, another Amari Cooper question, or do I use these other guys? He needs 3, Nuke Hopkins, T. Higgins, Chase, Jamar Chase, I assume he means. He has Kyler Murray as his quarterback. This is interesting because he's playing against Dak. You just talked up Amari. I mean, I don't mind that Kyler Murray nuke stack, to be honest. And then to me, it's a question of Jamar Chase or Amari Cooper. I'd probably lean Chase, but it sounds like you're higher on Amari.
No, I wouldn't say that. You have to take each one of these questions individually. And so with Jamar Chase, I mean, I know that my man T. Higgins is dealing with a little bit of an ankle. At the same time, the 49ers are going to be down 2 of the cornerbacks that were scheduled to start this game against the Bengals as well. So, I mean, I feel like my man Jamar Chase can have a bounce-back game like none other today if they get into a little shootout against the San Francisco 49ers. And, yeah, I mean, if you're going against Dak, Nuke the Bomb is going to be Kyler Murray's guy. I mean, whereas, like, Dak can spread the ball around to Gallup, CD Lamb, Cooper. I mean, actually, the tight ends have a really good match against Washington, too. So, I mean, Dalton Schultz could be in the mix. So, I mean, there's a lot of places that Dak can go with the ball. We kind of know where Kyler wants to go with the ball. So, I don't mind that stack either, especially since you're starting Kyler.
All right. Next one is from Zach. And Zach has a question. Sony Michel, Chase Edmonds, or A.J. Dillon. And I believe he doesn't say, but I'm guessing only one. And then also quarterback question, Taysom Hill or Matt Stafford. So, Tank, I'll let you go first this time.
I mean, there's a question of whether Edmonds is going to play, but I'm going to go with the guy who I know is getting all the volume. So I'm going with Sony Michel as the running back. And then, I mean, I think my man Rev already kind of talked about Matthew Stafford, but I really like Taysom Hill. Whenever you could throw 4 picks and still throw up a solid fantasy number, I'm going to definitely roll with you, especially if you're going against the Jets in the following game. So give me Taysom all day, every day, and twice on Sundays.
I love that we're ending in perfect agreement. I also think that Michelle and Taysom are the way to go. Keep sending in those questions, and we'll get to more flex picks later on in the show.
Time for our first fantasy face-off of the show. Andy Behrens. We've got a tight end debate to settle here first. We've got Kyle Pitts versus Dalton Schultz. You are on the Dalton Schultz side of this whole thing. Let's talk about it. Tell me why you like the Cowboys tight end in a game environment that I do really like.
Yeah, listen, first of all, I wish the answer was Kyle Pitts. I really do. I'm starting him in Fishbowl. I could use a week from him, but the last time you saw Carolina, it was 2 catches for 13 yards. He got a lot of attention. All of the fantasy stats basically go to Cordero Patterson in Atlanta's offense. He's hogged them all. Classic 9th-year breakout. And Kyle Pitts has been really quiet, right? He's only got 3 games this year with 5 receptions. Dalton Schultz has 7 such games. Dalton Schultz scores the occasional touchdown. We're still waiting for Kyle Pitts' 2nd touchdown of the season. It's just not happening. I want Schultz here in a game where I think the Dallas passing game just blows up.
Yeah, I think for the most part, Kyle Pitts is an every week start. Now, Dalton Schultz is a pretty good, this is a close debate here. I think if you have Kyle Pitts and for whatever reason Dalton Schultz on your team, this is one you could actually weigh. For the most part, though, the opportunity is still so good for Kyle Pitts. 5th in weighted opportunity among tight ends. I know we've been saying that basically all season, but at some point, like you said, he's got to find the end zone. 1.2% touchdown rate. There's just been so many targets, so few touchdowns, and I think that Arthur Smith has done a pretty good job as Atlanta's offensive coordinator in a really tough situation. I mean, they've got a rough offensive line. They've got a rough skill position group besides Kyle Pitts, obviously with no Calvin Ridley. Russell Gage, though, kind of stepping up of late, but still, I think he will adjust to what we saw Carolina do last time these two teams faced off. Maybe we see more Kyle Pitts at tight end. But Andy, let's see what the people had to say about this one. They are on your side here. Obviously, a lot of burnt feelings about Kyle Pitts out there, so no surprise that the people are done with Kyle Pitts and would rather take a chance on the Dallas Cowboys tight end. But let's move on to our running back debate. This one, I'm pretty excited about as well. You've got Josh Jacobs. I've got A.J. Dillon. Josh Jacobs has definitely surprised myself, me, especially more than anybody else. Tell me why you like him this week.
Yeah, suddenly Josh Jacobs is catching passes, right? He's coming off a game with 9 receptions. He's got at least 5 catches in 3 of his last 4. This was promised to us last year, and it's finally happening this season, so that's exciting. We've got no Kenyon Drake to worry about this week. Jacobs, last couple games, he's seen at least 20 touches. We like that. He's got 7 touchdowns on the year. He's the guy that they go to at the goal line. And he's got Kansas City, and clearly the Chiefs' defense has been playing better lately, basically since week 8. They still allow 4.7 yards per carry on the season. I don't expect the Raiders to veer away from Jacobs at any point, and it's nice that suddenly he's not sort of locked into game flow, right? If they start throwing the ball, apparently he's part of the game plan still.
Yeah, weird. You just got to get your play-calling, offensive-minded head coach out of the mix to get your first-round running back involved in the passing game. What a concept. Raiders, unbelievable. Anyways, I'm not on the Jacobs side of this one, although I do think he's a solid floor play, really good value in daily fantasy, but I mean, A.J. Dillon. I know that somebody that lives in Los Angeles commenting about the weather, I see it's forecasted for 33 degrees. That's probably summer weather to you people out there in Wisconsin, but that sounds cold to me. Big back in the cold. That's exciting. No way I'm going to veer away from A.J. Dillon. I know that obviously Aaron Jones is back, but Andy, I would be 0% surprised if A.J. Dillon outscores Aaron Jones the rest of the way. Big back that's catching passes too. He's been awesome as a receiver. I think he's got a shot for a huge game in this matchup. I think all of us here collectively expect the Packers to control this game, control the action. A.J. Dillon should be a red zone threat. He should be a passing game threat. And again, the Packers should be able to establish the run pretty heavily here in a positive game script. Give me A.J. Dillon for still a huge upside game, even though Aaron Jones is back. I am curious, legitimately curious, what the people had to say about this one. And once again, Andy, they are on your side. The sheep out there are just they're worried about Aaron Jones. Unbelievable. Well, this is disgusting. This is embarrassing for me. I've lost, according to the people. And, what do they know? What do they know? Anyways, according to them, I've lost both of these debates here. So let's get out of here. It's time for another break here on Fantasy Football Live. When we get back, we'll check in on what's trending, and Minty and I will be doing our player props for Week 14. Don't go anywhere.
B, I want the real, B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management. How you feel about that, Dr. J?
Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Otani Unleashed. Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
We are back here on Fantasy Football Live. While you were icing down some game day beverages, we were looking at what's trending. Here are some buzzy names this morning. Jerry Jeudy, Jeff Wilson, and Sony Michel. Andy, Tank. Can we talk about Jeff Wilson a little bit? I have to admit, I think I'm more bearish on him than the consensus. I was a bit surprised by Matt's answer during Make Your Pick in the A block. Are we not at all concerned, even with Eli Mitchell and Trenton Cannon out, now that Debo is back and we know what he does in the backfield, about Jeff Wilson's knee? I mean, he dinged it up last week, and this is the knee that he had off-season surgery on. He hasn't really been on the field that often. JaMychal Hasty is in the mix. Cincinnati's run defense, number 11 per DVOA. Am I too low on him at RB25? Andy, what do you think?
Listen, I'm not that excited about Jeff Wilson, and I think now that we know that, or we at least assume that Debo Samuel is back for this one, I think he's the running game, right? Like, how can he not be? He's been so good out of the backfield. If he returns, I think he's the, not technically a running back, but I think he's the running back that you want to have in fantasy rosters. Wilson is a guy who, like, I've got him going in a 16-team league as a flex. It's just sort of a Hail Mary. But as you say, his knee flared up last week, and now we're expecting him to be some sort of full workload back. I just don't see it. I doubt it happens. I imagine he finishes this one with like 10, 11 touches, something like that. I'm going to be shocked if he finishes with 20.
I think probably this is why Jeff Wilson is trending, right?
Yeah, I like the way that y'all gave all that analysis, but I feel like y'all could have just summed it up in one word. Shanahan.
That is very fair. Tank, you know what? I love your analysis. Let's give you a chance to pontificate about Jerry Jeudy and why he's barely a top 30 wide receiver.
I mean, he's barely a top 30 wide receiver because he's only had double-digit fantasy points in week 1 of the season. Like, that's it. Like, we understand he missed some time because he was injured, but I mean, they really just don't push the ball down the field that much. And when they did, it was when Jeudy was icing up. I mean, that's when Cortland Sutton was getting off. And now that my cousin, Javonte Williams, showed what he can do with a full workload, like, I expect Denver to be even more stubborn with the run. I mean, look who the head coach is, Vic Fangio. So you already know what kind of mantra they want to have. And obviously this week, I wouldn't look for him to do anything because they're playing against the Detroit Lions, who barely have enough players to stack up a lineup. And they're really bad against the run. So, I mean, I feel like this is going to be Uncle Melvin and Javonte all day.
Tank, over under 4.5 catches for Jerry Jeudy today.
4.5 catches over under? I mean, I'll give him 5, but it may be like 5 for 35.
I think that's probably about right, too. All right, it's time to get back into the sports book. Minty and Matt are checking in on the latest player props over there. Guys, what are you finding?
Oh, it's an exciting rundown we got here for our player props. Look, Minty, we have talked about Devonta Freeman. Like, I'm wondering, what year is this? We're talking about Rex Burkhead as a potential flex start all year. We've got some weird names, but there is not a year, there is not a universe where I expected to see some enthusiasm about Laquan Treadwell, but here we are. Hit us with this first one, Minty.
Here we are, Laquan Treadwell, my first player prop. I'm going over 32.5 receiving yards. He's really just started to see some time on the field a few weeks ago, and in the last 2 weeks, he's exceeded 50 receiving yards, once against the Rams, by the way. So facing a Titans defense who allow an average of 256 passing yards per game, may bode well for Treadwell here. So I think he'll hit the over easily, as I think 32.5 is set really, really low.
Yeah, my dynasty teams like 4 years ago really could have used that sort of enthusiasm for Laquan Treadwell. But I appreciate it happening here in 2021. This is pretty exciting for Laquan Treadwell. I hope he keeps it up. I will move on to a receiver that is, a little bit more high pedigree than Laquan Treadwell right now. That's DK Metcalf. I think DK Metcalf is due for some serious positive regression here in a matchup against the Houston Texans. We know they stink across the board on defense, versus the run, versus the pass especially. You can beat up on this Texans team. And I think Russell Wilson looked back-ish last week. Like, not all the way back, but definitely much better than he has at any point since his finger injury. I think DK Metcalf, the air yards have still been there for him. He just hasn't completely converted yet since Russ has been back. I think this is his statement game. I am very excited about all of these Seahawks, Russ, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf, and obviously everybody else. You can go ahead and forget about it. So I think DK gets back on the board with a big game, couple of big plays against the Texans this week.
Yeah, I love this total because against Houston, I think we will see Russ, Cook, and Metcalf assisting with that, although he hasn't hit the over at this number since week 7. I think things are looking up for Seattle this week around. My next prop is going to be on Greg Zuerlein. You know me, I love kicker player props, and I touched on Zuerlein before and hit that prop. So here's another one on Greg the leg. 1.5 is his total for field goals made. So I'm going with the over. Now, Washington, although on paper is set to have one of the poorest passing defenses and one of the best defenses against the run, has actually only held their last 2 opponents to 15 points apiece. I believe Washington will be very tight this time around against Dallas, so I'm going with over. I think Washington will hold Dallas onto a couple field goals, so I just need 2, and I'm good.
There we go. Look, I love you. Went off brand with the over in your first one. You got right back on brand, though. Staying on message here with a kicker player prop. We love to see it, Minty. For my last one here, I will stay in that same game. Talked about it up top. Very excited about Washington and Dallas, and I'm very excited about Terry McLaurin, who has kind of gone quiet as Taylor Heineke has been on a tear. Since they came off the bye, Taylor Heineke is #1 in EPA per dropback among all quarterbacks to start multiple games. Wild stuff. That's all. Meanwhile, Terry McLaurin is kind of taking a back seat, and I think that's good overall for the offense. It's bad for Terry McLaurin, but like Taylor Heineke picking his spots has been good, but I think this is the time where Terry McLaurin gets back involved for a big game. Give me the over on 60.5 receiving yards. McLaurin is still 5th among all wide receivers all season in weighted opportunity, but since week 9, he is 10th among wide receivers, so still they're getting elite opportunity, air yards, and target share there. And Dallas, we know they can take it away from an opposing offense. We know they can make some big plays, but they're also 28th in explosive pass rate allowed. Minty, I think this is where Terry McLaurin gets back on the board here for a couple of big plays against Dallas.
I agree, indeed. I think this is kind of like Metcalf in your last prop. Both of these players have been really inconsistent lately. But in all games that Terry McLaurin has played against Dallas, he has exceeded 62 receiving yards in all of those games. So I like his chances with the over in this one. Or your chances.
Yeah, love to try to get back early on some of these receivers that we know are verifiably good and are still seeing some volume. But what I love even more than that, Minty, is Yahoo Sportsbook Live, doing it every week. You'll be there this week. It's going to be very exciting. So everybody, make sure you tune back in here, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. Send your questions on social media. We'll have a lot of action to cover in this early slate, but also 2 really interesting primetime games. We'll be breaking it all down later. Player props, live bets, everything. So make sure you come back and tune in.
All right, our next over-under, we're looking at the Sunday night game between the Chicago Bears and franchise owner Aaron Rodgers, and we're talking about Darnell Mooney. And let's set the line at 10.9 fantasy points. Mooney went over this in the last game against the Packers, only barely. He's coming off kind of a rough game against Arizona. No real fault of his. That's a tough defense. He was tied to Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton kept giving the ball away. It's close for me. It's really close for me. That Packers defense is good. That's the problem. They allow less than 220 passing yards per week. We wouldn't expect a huge passing total from Justin Fields anyway. Mooney's got to find the end zone if he's got to hit this number, and I just don't think it happens here. I'm going to take the under. Matt, do you agree?
I do agree. I will stay negative and take the under as well. Listen, in a weird way, Andy Dalton is worse for the Bears offense, but better for their pass catchers in fantasy. I mean, I think we just kind of know that at this point in the season. Like, he can offer those bigger ceiling passing numbers because he's just simply going to throw the rock more than Justin Fields is, but he can also completely, utterly, and just tank the unit like he did last week. I don't think Justin Fields is going to do that at this point, but I do think, he has his own rushing equity. They're just not as pass heavy when he is in there. I don't think Mooney's going to have the volume totals that he was enjoying with old Andy Dalton back there. So yeah, give me the under on this one. I do not expect a score from Darnell Mooney in this one.
Tank, can we make it a sweep?
Remember the last time we was in this situation with Mike Williams and I was talking about I wanted to buy the dip so bad, but then I went along with y'all fools and then he balled out? I'm not falling for the banana in the tailpipe again. I'm going over Darnell Mooney to the moon. Like you already said, the last time he played against the Packers, he got over this number. He's been balling out 3 of the last 4 games. His only quiet game was the game that I hyped him up last week. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bounce right back to Mooney in this matchup against the Packers. I feel like A-Rod and those guys are going to go out and shows how he owns the Bears, which means that they're going to be playing from a negative game script. Fields going to have to throw it around, which means Mooney going to go off. Over. Do it for me, Darnell.
All right, I can see it. I hope it happens. We got one more over-under coming up later in the show. Right now, let's kick it to Liz. A little sleeper talk.
Thanks, Andy. Yes, let's get to some sleepers who could do damage for fantasy managers in Week 14. And you can call me a Grinch if it makes you feel better, but redemption season is way better than the holiday season. Case in point, somebody my girl Minty already brought up, Laquan Treadwell. The former first-round pick has been the Jags' most productive receiver over the past 2 weeks. He's recorded a snap share of over 90% and run a total of 67 routes since Jamal Agnew was sidelined. Treadwell should continue to be heavily involved today at Tennessee. The Titans have given up the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, allowing an average of nearly 200 yards per game and a total of 16 scores to the position. I'm fearlessly forecasting 5 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown for Treadwell. And if we're talking about the ghosts of fantasy past, then let's have a quick convo about Austin Hooper. Hooper is actually leading the Browns' trio of tight ends in snaps, routes, and targets. But with David Njoku on the COVID list and Harrison Bryant sidelined with a high ankle sprain, Hooper figures to be featured versus a Ravens squad that's allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends, including 9 scores to the position. I told you at the top of the show that this matchup was getting a lot of my attention, but now I'm curious about what's getting your attention. Matt, if you don't mind, let's check back into the chat and find out.
I would never mind. I always want to hear what the people have to say, especially when Tank and I can do this together. We'll see if we can't prevent any squabbling between the two of us in this segment, Tank, and really just actually help the people out. Maybe, but no promises. I'm interested in this one because this sounds like a roster decision I have to make in like all of my leagues. Equinox 55, no affiliation with the gym, needs a flex. Michael Gallup, Van Jefferson, or Odell Beckham Jr. Tank. These are 3 pretty good wide receiver options right around each other in rankings. Which of these 3 are you preferring?
Man, yeah, that's definitely a good question. I feel like I got to go with Gallup. I feel like, they have the better matchup against Washington, even though they've been playing better ball. I'm just really focused in on that game, and I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that Arizona defense could be a little tough. Obviously they want to try to take away Cooper Kupp, but at the same time, I really just don't know which one of those guys would be the ones that'll go off. I feel a little bit better about Gallup than those 2. So yeah, I'm going Gallup. Even though all of those guys can blow up at any moment.
Yeah, these three are all like volatile, high ceiling guys, but none is a real bankable floor. As I mentioned, I really do like the game environment between Washington and Dallas. I keep saying that all show long, so that game will probably end in like 24 points total. Tough scene for me, but I do think with Zeke being banged up, like this guy, he can't even run away from folks right now. What are we doing right now? I mean, I know Tony Pollard is out, but even last week they're still just trying to pound Zeke into the opposing. What are they doing? This guy can't. It's tough. I think Dallas will throw the ball more than normal, so give me Gallup in this one. Tom Hellman from YouTube asks us, Russell Wilson or Joe Burrow? Tank, Joe Burrow, he's got the little pinky finger thing or whatever is going on last week, but he actually looked better once he came back with the banged up pinky last week. Are you going him over Russell Wilson in this week?
I mean, actually, Russ has looked better. I mean, we're talking about, what's up with all these quarterbacks with finger injuries this year, too? I mean, now that we think about it, but Russ is a little bit further removed from his injury. I mean, he actually has looked better throwing the ball. But then at the same time, like, San Francisco's two starting cornerbacks are out. I mean, actually, this is a really good one. I think both of these guys can have really good games. But with Houston seemingly tanking and Seattle trying to rebound and coming off an unexpected win last week, I feel like they probably keep it going. So I'll go with Russ, and like you were talking about DK and Lockett and all those guys, I feel like they have a big game in Houston today.
Yes, I also agree with you. I think we go with Russ in this one against the Houston Texans. Q on YouTube. Listen, I know everybody's talking about we got to make the last push for the playoff people out there. We got to get you into the postseason. But Q, there are some folks like you out there, and I want to help you too. He says, hey guys, I need a W to avoid last place. Look, we don't want Q finishing in last place. We don't want him to do some embarrassing, stupid video or, walk through in public in some embarrassing outfit or have to wash his buddy's car or whatever. We want to help you. Yeah, exactly. We don't want him living. We don't want him dressing like a banana doing all that stuff. So we want to help you, Q. He needs a W to avoid last place. Would you flex the aforementioned Darnell Mooney, who you're trying to manifest that good vibe into existence, Gallup, who we just talked about, or Jamison Crowder as the last man standing for the New York Jets? This is an interesting one, Tank. Tell me where you're going.
Yeah. Dang. I mean, honestly, Corey Davis is out. Elijah Moore is out. If New Orleans comes in trying to smash because they're still vying for a playoff spot and New York is playing from behind, who else is Zach Wilson going to throw the ball to besides Jamison Crowder? I know you have, Cole and all those guys, but I feel like he should be a target monster in that slot. So even though it's not as sexy as the other ones, is it PPR? Did he say that? We don't know, huh?
Didn't say, didn't know. Yeah, we have no idea. Let's assume half-point PPR, the Yahoo standard out there.
Yeah, I mean, if it's half-point Yahoo standard, I think I got to go Jamison Crowder. I think he probably gets peppered today.
Yeah, listen, Q, buddy. I think that Gallup's got a higher ceiling. I think Darnell Mooney's got a higher ceiling. But we're trying to play it safe here, avoid you doing something horrible. I think Jamison Crowder is the safe play. That is the way I would go. Tank, if you look at this matchup with the Saints defense, they've been able to clamp down some number one receivers, and I guess at that point, it's Keelan Cole. But, Jamison Crowder's going to move into the slot in 3 wide receiver sets. He's going to get those little interior looks. Right. I agree with you. I think we go Jamison Crowder. Yeah. Playing from behind as well. Just hopefully Zach Wilson, if he throws him 15 balls, let's hope maybe 7 or 8 of them are catchable here for Jamison Crowder. All right, we've got to step aside here. We've got to take another break on Fantasy Football Live. But when we come back, Odell Beckham has scored in 2 straight games. Will he make it 3? We're going to tell you literally what is going to happen next.
B, I want the real, B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management. How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Otani Unleashed.
Yeah.
Aliens fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
As promised here, we're going to talk about some Odell Beckham action for all of the well, man, this better work out for the Rams. It hasn't really worked out for the Rams as a team, I guess, of late. Things are not going so well, but the Odell Beckham acquisition looks pretty good so far. 2 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. Is he going to make it 3? I say yes. We're going to set the line here at 0.5 touchdowns, and I am taking the over for Odell Beckham. Listen, this matchup, it speaks of fantasy glory, okay? Right? Like 2 teams that are really high in passing rate, 2 teams that are really high in pace of play. There should be a lot of opportunities for everyone here. Beckham dipped a little bit in terms of his routes run last week, but I think that was because he was coming in with a bit of an injury. He'd still managed to get that touchdown as well, but you know, we saw when these guys are all 3 healthy, Van Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, and Odell Beckham, it's just straight even in terms of the routes run here. I think Beckham gets into the box again in what should be a high-scoring game. Minty, are we going over on this one?
I am going over, guys. As an LA Ram, OBJ, yes, has already earned himself a touchdown in each of his last 2 games. Going up against an inconsistent Bills defense could bode very well for OBJ and Matt Stafford. So I like him to have a touchdown today.
Minty going over on Odell Beckham, going over on Laquan Treadwell. What is going on? What a great morning we got here in Week 14. Liz, are we sweeping this one as well?
Yes, I'm not going to go under after Minty just went over. Are you kidding me? We can't jinx this whole operation. Minty, my girl, we are on Treadwell together. We're on OBJ together. Matt mentioned that OBJ has scored in back-to-back weeks. He did it last week on a 51.5% snap share, running a limited number of routes, as Matt said, because of that hip pointer issue. If he could do that in a blowout against Jacksonville, imagine what he can do in this game that has the 2nd highest projected point total for the week per BetMGM. I love the opportunity. I love the odds here, and I am taking the over because of it.
Oh, look at all of the good vibes we've got going on here. This is wonderful. Now let's drip into some legal talk here. That'll keep it going.
Yeah, welcome to Fantasy Court. Our question this week is from someone who's just trying to finish the season strong and honor the process. It is from Tino Ladobo. And Tino asks, was wondering your opinions on waiver wire etiquette when a team has been eliminated. I'm out of the playoffs, but I can affect who makes it this week. Should I be claiming players that playoff teams would want? Good question here, Tino. And listen, I am in leagues in which eliminated teams are not allowed to trade. That's totally understandable. But I am not in leagues in which eliminated teams are not even expected to try. We need you trying out there. I appreciate your commitment to fair play and sportsmanship. I get that you don't want to be disruptive to the league here. I understand it. But let's be clear, nothing is as disruptive to competitive balance as teams that aren't even trying, that aren't setting lineups, that aren't taking care of the very basics of this thing. So in the regular season, yes, absolutely. Make claims, make your ads, set the best lineups you can. I actually fielded a bunch of questions this week from commissioners who were complaining that they had deadbeat teams in their leagues that had all these empty roster spots and it was going to affect the playoffs. And was it okay to dive in and actually set those lineups for them? So I love hearing from somebody who, even when things didn't go their way this year, still wants to make claims and set lineups. Absolutely, regular season, go ahead and do it. And also, like, don't forget that at Yahoo, we're always evaluating you, right? We don't let you do a thing around here without giving you a letter grade for it. We're keeping track of your gold, your platinum, your diamond status, like we're a hotel chain that's keeping track of your rewards. So you have to monitor that as well, right? You don't want to slip all the way down to bronze or something like that at the end of the season. So again, when we reach the playoffs, this gets a little different, right? Regular season, you're fine. Once we get to the playoffs, however, and you're in the consolation bracket, look, this is a different story. When you're there, it would be best if you didn't actually place waiver claims, if you kind of got out of the way. The only exception there is if you have a last place punishment, then I get it. Otherwise, in the playoffs, step aside. In the regular season, absolutely. And now I have to go to recess because I'm so shaken by the fact that Minty is all of a sudden taking overs. I can't handle it.
What it do, baby? It's your boy T-Money coming with my Week 14 ballers on the budget. Now, we starting off with my man Taysom Hill going against those Jets. Like my colleagues already talked about it. The dude balled out, had over 20 fantasy points last week with a janky finger, and he threw 4 picks. And so I don't expect him to do that against that New York Jets defense. I expect my guy to ball out. It seems like everybody balls out against the Jets, except Tyrod when I pick him. And so I expect Taysom to have a big game this week, and I'm also picking him just because I know he's going to vulture about 2 Alvin Kamara touchdowns for me, so at least this will make me feel a little bit better. At running back, I'm going with Josh Jacobs at Kansas City, $17. My colleagues already talked about this as well. My guy is actually involved in the pass game now, and that was even going on before Kenyon Drake injured himself. I hope you get healthy real soon. But he's going against the Kansas City Chiefs. I feel like he's going to be heavily involved in the run game because that's how you try to beat the Chiefs, run the ball. If they do get behind, he's going to be using the pass game. So I feel like this is a can't miss. He's going to get a ton of volume, only $17. Make sure you put this dude in your lineup. At wide receiver, Scary Terry. We already talked up that Washington and Dallas game. I mean, he has a really good matchup against the Dallas Cowboys secondary. Yeah, I know my boy Trayvon Diggs can get a lot of turnovers. At the same time, that Dallas defense can give up a lot of big plays. My man has been super quiet because he's had some tough matchups over the past couple of weeks. In an easy matchup in a game that's a potential shootout, in a divisional matchup rivalry, I feel like he can go off, and I think that we have some big plays coming from Scary Terry. This is a blow-up spot for him. At tight end, Austin Hooper going against Baltimore. He's only $12. Baltimore loves to give up points to fantasy tight ends. Njoku's out. Harrison Bryant's out. They have no other tight ends to throw the ball to. Baker really doesn't have too many wide receivers or skilled people to throw the ball to, period. Anyway, this is the only time I can cheer on Stanford football is in the NFL because we didn't do a damn thing in college football. So make sure you put my man Hoop in your lineup for only $12. And remember, the T is for the money, and the money is something that you will not have in your lineup or in your wallet or anywhere else on your person if you do not put these guys in your lineup. So, Producer Dan, let's go on to these stats. I mean, I ain't going to say too much. I mean, you know, I done what I should have been doing the whole time, and that's win a week, but I'm still a little bit far behind. I'm the man in the middle like I've been all week. Rev is where he needs to be. I'm right where I like Lizzie, right up close and personal. Harmon is still in first, but, I mean, we got a couple more weeks, and, you know, we got a lot of space and opportunity to do some things. Let's see what happens.
Yes, let's see what happens. And you too can get in on the action in daily fantasy this morning on Yahoo. Our big $1 million baller contest is open, and you can win cash prizes. First place takes home $100,000. Visit the Daily Fantasy Football lobby and join in on the fun.
All right, this week in the Fantasy Football Live community segment, I am happy to be joined by my good buddy, my co-host on the Saturday special DFS podcast. Is TJ Hernandez from 4for4. TJ, what's going on, buddy?
Matt, how you doing? I'm excited for this week, especially excited for this week because it's a championship week, maybe the most important championship week.
Yes, this week is a huge week. It's an exciting week at Yahoo. We have a live final here. This is very exciting. It's our first one. It's the inaugural one. We're bringing together the top fantasy players in the country at MGM National Harbor Resort and Casino for the first ever Yahoo Fantasy Football Championship. 60 winners of various contests. Like, this is what's cool, TJ, I think about this one more than others, is that, like, there's a lot of ways to get in, you know, unlike other live finals. You know, we're pulling participants from across the Yahoo Fantasy Football ecosystem, buzzword there. So there's a lot of ways to get in. We're not forcing entries, you know, in like a high rake tournament or something like that. But TJ, talk as a DFS veteran, as a guy who's played in a lot of contests in your day. Tell us what's exciting about this one in particular.
The lead up to the live finals is unlike in our typical DFS contest where it's 1 week and done. We're working towards a goal that's at the end of the season. So it has a little bit of that classic fantasy football feel where if you don't hit it this week, you still have next week to come back and chase that championship. And most of us all of us playing DFS, we're stuck at our computer. We're usually watching these games alone. To have a live final, to have that sweat in that room is really unlike anything else. I mean, you're rooting for your fantasy team, obviously, but to have the guy that you're playing against sitting right next to you, maybe you have the same players and you're rooting just for, your receiver to catch a touchdown versus his receiver on the same team. It's an electric atmosphere and it's really exciting. Obviously, they're playing for that top prize. The money is the ultimate prize. But sitting there in that room is unlike anything else, man.
Couple other details too. There are going to be some surprise guests, may or may not have been on championship fantasy teams in years past. I won't spoil too much. I'll let people be excited about that. And there's $200K in prizes too. But TJ, kind of give us, the elevator pitch on how to, play in this style of tournament as opposed to some of the other ones we traditionally talk about on our Saturday podcast.
Yeah, the reason that it's really exciting, and I think you can really call this the world champion or the DFS champion, is because it does test multiple facets of your game. Obviously, if you're qualifying the traditional way, you're usually doing through these very large field tournaments where you have to beat thousands, if not tens of thousands of people just to get a ticket. And then you get to the final where there's only 60 or so people, and it flips the strategy on its head. The field is much smaller, but you are still playing for first place. So that thing right there, playing specifically for first place versus something just trying to cash, just trying to get past the money line, it's such a different strategy, and you have to show that you're good at all of those different aspects. And then with such a small field playing for first place, it really brings in a psychological element that you might not be used to. Sometimes we just look at these roster rate projections and player projections. Here, with only 59 other opponents, you really start thinking about, what is my opponent doing? Now, what do I do to combat that? And the levels of strategy are much deeper than something like a just traditional DFS contest. So thinking about playing for first and thinking about what that opponent is doing is a really unique element to tournaments like this.
It really does combine so many of the coolest parts of daily fantasy, especially that psychological warfare.
Yeah.
I'm really into that. It's an exciting time here, and just make sure you all follow at Yahoo Fantasy on Twitter and the hashtag Yahoo Fantasy Champs across all channels to check out the action. And remember, this is going to be an annual event. It's not just this year. Hey, maybe you'll be there next year. So good luck in your pursuit of this whole thing out there.
Let's get back to more of your questions now. Our first one comes from JoeMan34, and JoeMan asks, Chase Edmonds or Brashad Perryman? Yes, Matt, please take this one.
God, why me?
You love Brashad Perryman.
Yeah. I mean, maybe a very, very different version of myself like Brashad Perryman, but I'm older, I'm wiser. I mean, can you really afford to, well, definitely older. I don't know about wiser. You know what? No, I am wiser. Anyways, point is here. I don't know. Can you afford to wait on Chase Edmonds? Because, he's still a game time decision for this game on Monday night. There's a chance he just doesn't play, but at the same time, I mean, you're risking a zero with Perryman anyway, so I guess you might as well just play Chase Edmonds. I would prefer you go ahead and drop Perryman and find anybody else that you can go ahead and stick in case Chase Edmonds doesn't play. Give me a break with this Brashad Perryman thing. What year is this?
Give me a break indeed. Our next question comes from Mr. Manners, and Mr. Manners asks, should he run Lamar or have faith that Cleveland will bottle him up and instead play Taysom Hill? Tank, I talked about your catchphrase in reference to Lamar, that invisible juice. Taysom Hill's got diet invisible juice, I think. So which of these two would you prefer to play?
Yeah,
He's
I mean,
the stevia
Lamar's
brand,
my guy. Yeah, Lamar's my guy, but not going against that Cleveland defense, especially the way he embarrassed my man Myles Garrett. and Jadeveon Clowney on that one play. I feel like that Cleveland defense, especially coming off a long bye week, just focusing on those plays that he made against, we're going to try to come back with a little vengeance. So I feel like this one could be closely contested as well. We already talked about the really great matchup that Taysom has, being able to use his arm and his legs against the Jets. So give me some more of that Taysom Hill. He may not have the invisible juice, but he got a little Kool-Aid that's going to get him balling.
Fantastic analogy. Minty, this next question is for you. Do you think the Raiders can pull off an upset on the Chiefs? Asks CRB80, who might know that you're a Raiders fan.
This one's really tough to call because I thought they would upset the Chiefs in their last meeting, but they didn't. And it's again, this one's a tough one to call because the Chiefs are pulling out wins, but they're not as impressive as we're used to seeing. And the Raiders have some injuries on offense that could affect them. I don't know. I would say I don't believe the Chiefs can cover this large spread of what 10 points, 9.5. So I guess Chiefs win, Raiders cover, but I'm not calling an upset here.
Very, very political answer. I appreciate it, Minty. This next question is from Luke Bowers. Luke wants to know, is it finally Denzel Mims time, or has that ship already sailed? Bro, forget sailing. That ship has sunk. I'm going to take this one because I had Denzel Mims foolishly on my sleepers list last week. If he can only catch one ball for 4 yards with Corey Davis and Keenan Cole both out of the lineup, then no, I don't think he can do it this week. He is the Titanic of draft picks. Next question. Damon debates. I like what he did there. Stafford or Heineke? Andy, I know how you feel about Stafford over Hill, but Heineke?
All right, listen, I know I talked down Matt Stafford earlier, but I couldn't. I'm not going to go this far. I'm absolutely not going this far. We know we're getting an interception or two from Taylor Heineke. The ceiling is so much lower. Again, Stafford averages 300 yards per game on the season. He's thrown 3 touchdown passes or more in like 5 of 7. So this has got to be Stafford even in a tricky matchup.
But we appreciate the question from the Washington football team fan. All right, last question here from A. Garcia. Matt, I'm going to send it to you to make up for that Perryman talk. Sony Michel or Zeke Elliott, it is PPR.
I appreciate getting a question here from guys who've been relevant in the last 2 years. Sony Michel here. Yeah, I think you got to play Michel over Zeke. It's tough, right? This is Ezekiel Elliott, but as I mentioned, I mean, I'm watching him against the Saints. Like, as soon as he pulls away from anybody, it's a little something with the knee here. It's clearly not 100%. Very tough to sit him on the bench with no Tony Pollard in this matchup. But again, Sony Michel is a lock for like 15 touches bare minimum. With no Darrell Henderson in this game. Arizona has been giving up explosive rushing plays. I know that the Rams can do an awful lot more than the Bears on offense, but you saw David Montgomery tear up the Cardinals last week. I think that Sony Michel can do something similar here. I just don't see, unless you've got 2 like top 5 running backs, how you can bench Michel this week.
We have to take another break here on Fantasy Football Live, but when we come back, Minty and I will run through her best bets for Week 14. Don't go away.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management. How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon.
Yeah,
The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Otani Unleashed.
Yeah.
Aliens fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
We're back here on Fantasy Football Live. 7 games kicking off in just about 15 minutes. Let's recap the top actives and inactives this morning. Dallas running back Tony Pollard is inactive today against the football team. He was a game-time decision with that foot injury. On the other side of that matchup, J.D. McKissic, who's been dealing with a concussion, will not be able to go today. In the late games, the 49ers are on the road at Cincinnati. Good news, as both Deebo Samuel and Joe Mixon are expected to play. All right, Minty, it is time for you and me to debate your best bets for this week. So tell me, what do you have?
All right, first one is my favorite matchup here, and I think most people's favorite matchup, the Bucks and the Bills. Now, the Bucks are 3.5-point favorites, and I normally don't like to bet favorites at this number, but I believe the Bucks will cover. Buffalo, this is a really bad scheduling spot for Buffalo as they're coming off of a short week. The Bills are showing their true colors as they've had the easiest schedule so far in the league, and they struggle against good competition like New England, and now I think Tampa is going to be their toughest competition yet. I don't think this Bills defense can compete with such a high-flying Tampa offense, and Tampa is 4-1 against the spread at home this season, while Buffalo is 2-4-1 against the spread in their last 7 games this season. So I'm really liking the Bucks here.
I'm with you, 100%. You talked about the Bills defense being exposed by Bill Belichick on Monday night. Well, the Bucs defense, meanwhile, has been getting healthier. Their secondary, at least, Jamal Dean cleared the concussion protocol, so all 3 starting cornerbacks will be on the field. The Bills don't have Tre'Davious White, and we know that Tom Brady is going to throw the ball more than 3 times, so I agree with you. Also, Tom Brady, after last week's game, rushed off and was like, focus on Buffalo. That's what he's going to do. I think he knows how important this matchup is to the AFC and the playoff race. I think the Bucs will absolutely cover in this one. What's up next?
For Sunday Night Football, we have an NFC North rivalry, the Packers and the Bears. The Packers are 11.5-point favorites, and I would never bet a spread this large, but if I had to pick, my strongest pick would be on the Packers here. I can see this being a blowout. I mean, Chicago has coaching issues, their offense can't fight back against Green Bay, and in the last 20 matchups between these 2 teams here, the Bears have only covered in 5 games of those 20 matchups, and the Packers are the best team against the spread in the league, going 10-2 against the spread, so I gotta ride with the Packers here.
Minty, I know, and you have taught me not to bet with my heart. So I'm going to say that I am using a strategy that I learned from you and that you mentioned at the top of your analysis. You never bet spreads that are over 2 digits big. And by the way, Justin Fields will be on the field, as will Allen Robinson, as will David Montgomery, who wasn't on the field last time these 2 teams met in Week 6. That, by the way, was a time in which the Packers Aaron Rodgers and the Packers owned the Bears by 10 points. So I think that the Bears will be able to cover this spread because it is the holidays and I deserve a present, as do other Bears fans. Lastly, what do you have for Monday night?
Lastly, we have Monday Night Football as the Rams take on the Cardinals, a very, very exciting matchup. The Cardinals are 2.5-point favorites, but I think I like the Rams here. They say it's pretty hard to beat the same team twice in a season, so I gotta ride with the Rams. The Cardinals have looked phenomenal this season. The Rams are in a funk. Their acquisition of Von Miller hasn't met expectations, and Stafford has committed quite a few costly turnovers, but that all ends tonight. LA doesn't have any issue scoring. They are averaging the most yards per play, and defensively they're allowing the 4th fewest, so their defense will do enough to limit Kyler Murray, especially in his 2nd week off of injury. So Sean McVay is 4-0 straight up and against the spread on the road in Arizona. So it's hard to beat that trend there.
Intriguing matchup, certainly for the playoff race, for all the fantasy implications. These 2 teams are very evenly matched. It's worth noting that per overall total DVOA, they're 5-6. The Rams offense ranks slightly ahead of the Cardinals, whereas the Cardinals defense ranks slightly ahead of the Rams. I think the statistical bearing for the Cardinals, though, doesn't factor in all of the time that Kyler missed. He came back, along with Nuke, by the way. They both came back, looked pretty sharp against the Bears last week. I think that the Cardinals are being treated like the Valtteri Bottas of the NFC West. Let's give them the respect they're due. I think that the Cardinals win and beat the Rams twice in 2021.
Great
So-
F1 reference there. You know
thank
what?
you.
I would love to bet on the Cardinals here, but I like them as dogs, and I just have to see what happens with the Rams here.
Fair enough. It will be a great game to watch. There's still time to adjust those lineups, though, so let's get back to fantasy and talk some freebies with Matt.
Yeah, let's bring the good vibes in here. The players who are under 25% started that you should think about making that last. You got 10 minutes, all right? This is a last-second switch you're about to make for these three players here. Andy, I love your pick. You should go first.
Yeah, give me Marquez Valdez-Scantling in this one. I think he's actually crept up just over 25%, but that's okay. I didn't want to get stuck talking about Jamison Crowder or some random Jet. MVS has seen 19 targets over his last 2 games, and these are premium targets. These are Aaron Rodgers targets. They are also deep downfield. This guy leads all receivers in intended air yards per target at over 18 yards. He's been great lately. In those last 2 games, he's caught 8 of these passes for 173 yards. He basically specializes in long game-changing plays, and the Bears defense specializes in giving them up. There's no way he doesn't catch a 50-yarder in this one. I think he's a really strong play this week.
Really like that call. Really like you going against your Bears. I think that's smart logic there as well. All right, Tank, hit me with a sleeper you like this week.
Yeah, well, you hated my pick last week, Russell Gage, and he balled off, so I'm going to go with another one that you're probably not going to like, Cam Newton. So we got Cam Newton, and, you know, it ain't going to be pretty. I mean, but these dudes are freebies for a reason. And, I mean, I feel like you have to put Cam Newton in that Mitchell Trubisky thing right now. I mean, he's going to have some ugly throws. He'll probably have some turnovers. What you got to do is just plug him into your lineup, pinch your nose, take a shot, close your eyes, hold your breath, and then look at the box score in about 3.5 hours or so, and then you should be doing all right because Atlanta gives up the 2nd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. We saw what my boy TB12 was able to do against them. We don't have any more, you know, Christian McCaffrey, so you don't have to worry about him stealing touchdowns and feeling bad about McCaffrey not getting tubs, even though he didn't feel bad about it anyway. So this could be a sneaky, ugly shootout. Cam, $27 in DFS as well. I feel like he'll be a solid play today if you need a quarterback.
Tank, I hate a lot of things about the Carolina Panthers. One thing I will never hate about the Carolina Panthers is Cam Newton. The warm fuzzies with this acquisition might have died, but I'll never hate hearing some good things about Cam Newton. All right, let's get to mine here. Another thing I love to see, Amon-Ra St. Brown getting his first NFL touchdown in Detroit's first win. Hell of a good time for those guys last week. Great timing by the rookie receiver. I know this might seem like I'm chasing points here, but really I'm actually chasing an opportunity boost for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Over the last 3 games, which coincides with Josh Reynolds also being acquired, who I talked up last week. Look at me talking Detroit Lions receivers 2 weeks in a row. What the hell is wrong with me? Anyways, Amon-Ra St. Brown over the last 3 games, team high 90 routes run, team high 20 targets. I think if you are getting desperate again, for a wide receiver, if I'm attacking somewhere in this Denver Broncos secondary, I am going down the middle on these guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown is he's doing a little bit more things out at the flanker position, of course, playing more in 2 wide receiver sets, which is important, but I'd much rather pick on them over the middle, especially with TJ Hawkinson out. I think it's a good week for Amon-Ra St. Brown to continue to get all of that opportunity. Look, I know I said earlier that it's not just about the folks who are needing these last-second adjustments here to get into their playoffs. It's also a good time for those people who have stunk all year to get some things off their chest, which is what we let you do with your absolute nightmare at worst waiver wire pickups in this week's Survival Kit. We asked you people, the people, my people, what was the worst pickup that happened in your league this year? Let's get right into it because there are some absolute dust bombs to talk about this week. First one up. We've got, yeah, you're right. This beauty here, Kerryon Johnson. You picked up Kerryon Johnson and you dropped Jalen Waddle. I'm going to check with my statistician back there on Kerryon Johnson's stats. We'll get back to that here in a second because I'm pretty sure he's done literally nothing all year. Meanwhile, Jalen Waddle is an every week start. in fantasy football. See, this is the problem. Sometimes people, you just churn that bench too much. You see like Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter, one of the big insiders, throw, oh, this guy's getting added to the practice squad. You're like, I got to pick him up right now at Yahoo Fantasy. Let me pick him up right now. Why can't I pick him up? Why is he not in the player pool? Why is it's like sometimes you need to have a little patience. Don't churn that bench too much. Just a reminder here, how many stats with Karen Johnson? Oh, 0 stats so far this year. So yes, this was a tough scene by you, Jimmy. Let's move on to the next one. Couple of problems here in this one. First problem, what is with the screenshot, my guy? You know your computer has a screenshot function. You could have just done that rather than taking a picture with your phone. Let's move on, though. Let's talk about the important stuff. First of all, what happened? He drops Eli Mitchell for Darrell Williams. Yikes. Eli Mitchell's like a top 10 running back. Then he drops Darrell Williams for Samaje Perine. What was the point of that one? Like, to replace Joe Mixon at some point? Well, that never really worked out. Darrell Williams gave you several good weeks as a fantasy starter. Then, for basically no reason at all, you drop Alexander Mattison for Alex Collins. Alex Collins has done nothing all year. Alexander Mattison is an elite player in fantasy whenever Dalvin Cook gets hurt, and Dalvin Cook kind of gets hurt a lot. And so this is the point here. Don't just keep churning that bench all the time. Like I said before, because at some point, Mattison was going to have that week if Cook went down. Eli Mitchell looked like he had that 49ers role locked down. So don't just be too antsy Aaron. Antsy Aaron. That's what we're going to call you in this one here because you're just constantly churning that bench. Oh, man. This is tough to see for old Aaron. Now it's time to move into the worst tweet of the week. And it's a little different this week. I'm not going to be roasting like a bad response or something. I'm just going to point out that this was absolutely the worst one that we got. Oh, Uncle Maurice drops Eli Mitchell for Sam Ehlinger, a backup quarterback on the Colts. Now, context is important here. This is a quarterback-needy dynasty superflex team. He thought he was like trying to grab Sam Ehlinger when all this stuff was going on in the summer with old Carson Wentz, but my God. And look, in fairness to you, Unc, nobody saw the whole Eli Mitchell thing coming. Nobody saw him becoming the 49ers feature back in the range of outcomes during the summer. And I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt here. I'm assuming this happened in the offseason. Well, the joke's on all of us. That's exactly what happened. And I mean, for you, you must just absolutely hate. Just wake up burning rage at this transaction. Every Eli Mitchell carry must just be like a punch to the gut. Over and over, a stab in the back, just a knife in the side. It all must be tough for you, Uncle Maurice. I hope you had a better season after this transaction.
We are just moments away from kickoff, so let's get to as many social media questions as we can. And let's start with this first one from this guy. Monty, should he start? Monty, CEH, Sony Michel, AJ Dillon, or Hilliard or Hunt. He needs to pick 3 full-point PPR. Andy, there are a lot of running backs to sift through here. I'm particularly interested to see what you think of Hilliard with McNichols coming back this week.
Yeah, if we're picking 3 here, Monty is an easy one for me. Sony Michel, an easy one for me, because we know those two are just absolutely going to dominate carries. They're probably going to see a handful of targets as well. And then it comes down to really, for me, this is CEH versus AJ Dillon, which is a little bit of a no contest. I'm going to go AJ Dillon there. I think it's reasonably close. Hilliard, wow, like congrats on even working your way into this question with some real starters. I'd stay far away from that. Again, we've got 3 different backs for Tennessee that we think are going to get touches this week. So Hilliard's not really in this mix for me. It's Dillon, it's Monty, and it's Sony Michel.
3 picks for the person who asked the question, not 3 backs in Tennessee that we want to deal with. Next question is for Minty. It is from Mr. Longshore. Congratulations, your parlay hit last time, but now he wants another.
Yes, so I just tweeted one out actually. I'm doing a favorites parlay, Saints money line, Packers money line, and Seahawks money line. That is a payout of plus 109, which means if you throw in $100 on this parlay, your total payout would be $209 and some change. So I really like this parlay today. Hopefully it hits.
Oh, that is an interesting one. Matt, this next question is also interesting. It's coming to you from Rich Roll. He is wondering Julio Jones back after missing his last 3 games, Van Jefferson or Michael Gallup, who's caught 5 balls in 3 straight games. Which of these 3 receivers would you prefer to go with?
Yeah, I really like all these options as a wide receiver 3, as a high upside flex. I mean, I really, really want to say Gallup, but part of me thinks, I don't know, Julio Jones in his game back against the Jaguars could be kind of spicy. Nah, I'll just go with Michael Gallup. But you don't want to do the Julio experience. He'll be hurt by quarter number 3. Come on, give me that.
That's pretty sound logic there. Next question is a defensive question. So, Tank, I have to go to you. It is from Leonardo. Would you bench the Buffalo defense, obviously, in a tough matchup, for any of the following: Atlanta at Carolina, Cincinnati versus San Francisco? Jimmy G is always good for a few picks. San Francisco at Cincinnati, other side. Houston versus Seattle, or Detroit versus Denver? And remember, you're trying to replace the Buffalo D.
Oh, man, that's actually a tough one because we know that Tom Brady has been turning the ball over a lot, even though that Tampa Bay offense is explosive. But, yeah, I mean, if I had to go for one, I would look for Cincinnati to bounce back after a tough loss to the Chargers. So I would probably go with Cincinnati's defense over San Francisco, even though that one could shoot out. But I could see some turnovers in that game.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of Fantasy Football Live. Thanks for kicking off your Sunday with us. If you need us on a day other than game day, you can find us on the Fantasy Football Forecast podcast all week long. Also, every day on Mad Bets. And Matt and Minty will be back in just about 90 minutes on Yahoo Sportsbook Live. Of course, we'll see you back here next Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Good luck to all of your fantasy teams in Week 14. Go get that playoff berth.